We are witnessing a total political system failure in America. If you're anything like me, you may find yourself constantly overwhelmed by everything that's wrong with politics. And when I say politics, I'm not talking about Democrats or Republicans. I'm talking about the flaws that exist in our political system, regardless of which party is in power. And I know it's hard to talk about politics these days, but look, the government is ours. We pay for it, so it needs to work for us. And right now it doesn't, and I mean it really doesn't. So what's going on here? Is it Russian meddling in social media? Is it him? Is it her? No. Those two were the least popular presidential candidates since they began keeping track of such things. Only 4% of Americans have a great deal of confidence in Congress now. Just 4%. America is no longer even considered a full democracy. We are witnessing a total political system failure in America, which is the complete opposite of what our nation's founders had in mind. So I'm going to show you 3 lines that show what's causing this failure, how we can fix it, and what you can do about it. So here's your first line. What I want you to do is take any issue you really care about and picture it on this line. This line comes from a Princeton University study that shows how public opinion influences the laws that Congress does or doesn't pass. They looked at 1,800 public opinion polls over a 20-year period, and we took their data and plotted it in this chart. See this horizontal line? That shows public support for a law amongst average Americans. This vertical line? That shows the likelihood of the public support leading to the passage of a law. When you plot it for the average American, you get a line that looks like this. There's your issue sitting on that line. If there is 0 support for a law, there's about a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass it. And if there is 100% support for something, the most popular thing ever, there's still a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass it. So the line is horizontal because no matter how much support there is among average Americans, there's still a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass that law. Princeton determined that the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact on public policy. How in the hell does that happen? Consider this. Politicians are spending up to 70% of their time raising funds for re-election after they get into office. Why? Because in order to win a seat in the Senate in some races, you would have to raise $45,000 every single day. 365 days a year for 6 years to raise enough money to win. Now consider that only 0.05% of Americans give more than $10,000 to politics. And then you see why politicians have become completely dependent on the 0.05% of Americans, billionaires and special interest groups, who fund their campaigns. Meanwhile, you've got lobbyists writing our laws and donating to the politicians who pass them. We have a 2-party duopoly of Democrats and Republicans that makes it so that independents can't win, while the American people are leaving the major parties in droves. As you can see here, nearly half of American voters are now registered independent. And then there's gerrymandering, with politicians drawing the boundaries of their own voting districts into crazy shapes designed to prevent competition. Today, only 14% of House campaigns are actually competitive. 86% of them are not. And we wonder why young people feel that their vote doesn't matter. I've covered a lot here, but it all adds up to this vast ring of influence over our elected leaders. It's a corrupt system in which we, the people, have near zero influence over our own government. And that is sad. That is not the country I feel like I grew up in. But what's worse is that by allowing this to happen, we are causing the failure of the most important issues facing our nation. We're wasting trillions of dollars a year on fraud and abuse in our own government. 1 in 5 American children live in poverty. Our health care is the most expensive in the world. We have more people in prison per capita than Russia and China. We're losing jobs to the rest of the world, and we're not even doing enough to keep our air and our water clean for our children. America was founded on the promise of self-governance, but instead we have statistically non-significant impact on public policy. So the question is, how do we unrig this system? I'm obsessed with this idea, not just of unrigging it, but actually fixing it. That's when I met Josh.
This is it. This is the issue behind the issues. If we fix the system, we'll have so much more power to fix everything else. So I spoke to some of the most brilliant people in the country. Constitutional scholar Lawrence Lessig, Zephyr Teachout, and dozens of other constitutional scholars and experts and strategists. They all said the same thing. You could pass a law that would stop political bribery and fix our broken elections. And if you could do that, you could wrest power away from the corrupt establishment and put it back in the hands of the people. Here's how you fix our broken elections. End gerrymandering with independent redistricting commissions.
Create ranked choice voting so third parties and independents can run and win.
Implement automatic voter registration and vote from home.
And here's how we can crack down on political bribery. Overhaul lobbying and ethics laws and close the revolving door so politicians can't be bribed with high-paying job offers.
Mandate full transparency of political spending so we know who's trying to buy influence.
Give every voter a $50 or $100 tax voucher so politicians spend time fundraising from their constituents, not just that 0.05% that I talked about earlier.
If you could pass even just some of these reforms, you would undo that ring of influence and begin to reinstate we the people as the most important influence over our elected leaders. So we took all of these reforms and put them in a model law and named it the Anti-Corruption Act. And get this, 87% of Americans support making the Anti-Corruption Act the law of the land. Look at the breakdown. 91% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans. It's incredible. Now you might be thinking 9 out of 10 Americans. Surely Congress will pass it. But on this issue, more than any other issue, it's like asking the fox to put a lock on the henhouse. Politicians won in the current system, and they have an incentive not to fix it. So we need to go around Congress, in this case, by passing anti-corruption acts in cities and states all across America. Now, every time I say this, people look at me and say, how does passing city and state laws lead to fixing all of these problems with the federal government?
Can I do this part?
Go for it.
So, first of all, the U.S. Constitution gives states sole control over how elections are run, even federal elections. So when we fix gerrymandering or election laws, that fixes a federal election in each state. That means that by going state by state, we have an immediate impact on how we elect Congress and how we hold them accountable. But there's more, and that brings us to our second line. This line is from a Bloomberg News study. It finds that throughout American history, passing state laws leads to federal victory. Let me show you what I mean. This chart shows the number of states over time that pass laws giving women the right to vote. When it hits the right side of the chart, that's the federal victory. Okay, now I want you to watch the blue line. We're going to do this again with interracial marriage. There were a few states in the Northeast that made it legal decades ago, and centuries go by, and we hit this blue line where all of a sudden there's a rush of activity, which leads pretty quickly to federal passage. So here we are again with same-sex marriage. One state, Massachusetts, for many years. A couple decades later, we hit that blue line, a jump in state activity and federal passage. This isn't about these issues. This is about a winning political strategy. The crucial finding in the Bloomberg study is that a key event, often a court decision or a grassroots campaign reaching maturity, triggers a rush of state activity that ultimately leads to a change in federal law. So fixing this problem is possible, but how do we create our trigger moment for this issue? Well, the grassroots campaign from the study, that's Represent Us. We're bringing conservatives and progressives together to pass anti-corruption laws all across America using 3 strategic innovations: right-left coalitions, calling out corruption, and building a movement, a big movement. And I'm going to break them down for you.
Can I do this part?
No. First, right-left. This is how people self-identify in America. This isn't party identification. This is how you feel politically. And as you can see, it's 25% liberal, 36% conservative, and 34% moderate. But for the past 40 years on the reforms I've outlined, it's liberals speaking to liberals using liberal language with liberal messengers, liberal. I just had to say that one more time. And you're just not going to change the political power structure of America with 25% of the people. Fixing corruption requires that we enlist all Americans, liberal, conservatives, and moderates who, as we've shown, overwhelmingly support reform. Number 2, corruption. When we talk about money in politics, gerrymandering, democracy, campaign finance reform, most people just tune out. But people are fired up about corruption. And number 3, we must build a movement, a big movement comprised of all kinds of people from all across America fighting to pass anti-corruption laws, and then make sure they are implemented and protected. So again, liberals and conservatives working together, corruption, and build a movement. This is the foundation of Represent Us. We believe the government should work for every American, not just a handful of billionaires and special interests. But it's not just an idea. In a few years, we've already racked up 85 wins all across the country. And if we can get those 85 wins to 850 wins, we can fix our corrupt political system, save America, and get to work on fixing everything else that's broken in our country. This is how we build this movement big enough to trigger that rush of state activity that leads to a change in federal law. And that brings us to our last line. Right now, this is you. And right now, these are all of the ways that you can help us go state by state, city by city, to fix the corruption in American politics. Volunteer and join a Represent Us chapter. Or, if that's not your thing, join the Commonwealth to make a monthly donation in support of someone who does volunteer. 100% of your money goes straight to passing these laws, not to overhead or our expenses. Every voice matters. Your voice matters. If you do nothing, nothing changes. But if we all do a little, we can win together. So the only question left is this. Will you cross that line? Join us at represent.us.
First of all, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Connie Regularly, and I am here to talk to you about unrigging the child welfare system. This is an issue that is not on the radar of the general population, but here's what you need to know. For nearly 50 years, we have been engaged in a social experiment that has failed. The government's rehoming of children is not a new issue resulting from immigration, but a well-oiled machine perpetuated by private profiteers and a perverted federal funding scheme. On any given day of the year, there are 500,000 children in foster care. And the statistics show that the results for these children are bad. They are more likely to be in prison, poorly educated, and be targeted when they have families of their own. The stats also show that 85% of these children are in foster care on the broad, undefined category of neglect. They are not there for psychological abuse, physical abuse, or sexual abuse. In fact, the stats show that only 12% are in foster care because of physical abuse, and only 4% are there for sexual abuse. Many of the issues that you talk about here, poverty, health care, opioid crisis, mental health issues, result in children being removed from their families and the loss of those family relationships forever. So how is the system rigged? In 1974, the Mondale Act started the broad-based federal funding to states under CAPTA, the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. Now, two sources of funds are relied upon by the states. The Title IV funds, which are a use it or lose it scheme, dollar for dollar, and never subject to sequester. These are funds that can only be used when children are taken from their parents and put in the homes of strangers. The Title IV funds are the funds that are available to stabilize and reunify and rehabilitate families. And here's the problem. The E funds are 10 times that of the B funds. The $9 billion spent for putting children in foster care is only looking at $800 million for rehabilitating families. Not only is this financial incentive perverted to remove children from their family resources, but in 1997, Congress passed ASFA, the Adoption and Safe Families Act. Now we put a bonus check on the head of every child, and when the state has successfully terminated that child's rights to their family forever, they get a $6,000 bonus check. This madness is perpetuated by massive, multi-billion-dollar private contractors who move and shelter children for profit. How do we unrig it? First of all, there are conflicts within the system that must be removed and prohibited. The agencies themselves have opposing missions that cannot be tolerated. I was a district attorney when I first became a lawyer, and across the street was the public defender's office, and we were always fighting against each other. I thought every man had to go to jail, and they thought every man could be rehabilitated. Within our child welfare agencies in every single state, they are prosecuting parents and supposed to be reuniting and helping parents in the very same agency, and yet, as I already explained to you, all the money goes to the destruction of families. Not only is there a conflict within the agency themselves, but also within the contractors, the judges, the guardian ad litems, the court-appointed attorneys. It's all one massive, incestuous conflict of the use of time and money. We need family advocates to help families navigate the system and to big brother families and to rehabilitate them. I've been an attorney for 25 years and I've personally witnessed this destruction. Now, we've developed a grassroots efforts through Facebook called the Family Forward Project, where we invite families from all over the country and all over the world who have been affected by this system. We need you to also share this story. And remember that this is America, and the broken family is not the norm. We ask you to become a family advocate. Thank you.
I have found barbecue at a few places that it's the big meat cuts. Yeah, so I'm gonna say hello.
Okay.
Hey, hi.
Hi.
We are here at Unrig the System, Unrig Summit, Unrigging the System, 2019 in Nashville with Max Carver, right here.
Oh, this guy right here.
Max Carver. I'm Jen Johnson. And yeah, how's the day been going?
Oh man, I have sat on a couple gerrymandering panels so far, and I have to say, it got pretty cynical, but there is a lot of hope. And I learned so much, especially from young activists who really just kind of put ideas out there and followed through, not knowing how to do it and kind of learning along the way. And really, the message I kind of took away is you can, just as a person, if you have the motivation to make a change, you can really just step forward. You don't need to rely on politics, politicians, or the political system. That there is power to the people to some extent, and that's, what was her name? It was Katie Bailey. Oh, she's amazing.
From Michigan.
From Michigan.
Where they passed an anti-gerrymandering bill or measure this year, which actually came under a lot of attack from the lobbyist side to try to take it off the ballot so people would not be able to vote.
That's
Yeah. But it sounds, I mean, I think one thing that it sounds like is there's a lot of cynicism, but also a lot of hope.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, when you talk to people about our political system, what is their reaction to it? How do you talk to them?
I think the thing I've learned is that generally people get caught up in what's happening now, what needs to change now, get very excited about a candidate or a particular cause. They either win or they lose, and then their involvement dissipates. And why I was drawn to represent us in the organization is I met with Josh, and Josh really explained that this is a 20, 30-year fight, that this is about a slow build, creating change on a local level, grassroots style, the same way the civil rights movement happened, the same way the gay marriage and gay rights movement happened, or even prohibition. It's cities, counties, states, one measure at a time, one ballot initiative at a time, until you would cross this imaginary threshold where all of a sudden it's a national conversation. And I like that because it's a sustained effort. And it's really easy to get caught up in the news cycle, whether it's Fox or CNN, and go, oh, this is the issue, this is going to fix everything. It's not the case.
Right, because it changes all the time, but there's like a base layer of something that's always the same, and it's the system, right? Yeah, so do you want to tell people a little bit about Unrig Summit and where we're at?
Absolutely. So we are at Unbreaking Summit right now in Smashville, Tennessee.
Smashville, what's that?
I don't know. I keep seeing it right out there.
It's out there?
I was thinking we're smashing corruption. So
We are.
Smashville
It's
yeah.
true.
And this is summits are great because what you do is you go to a place where everyone kind of has a common cause with all sorts of different experience, organization, kind of particular purposes or particular skill sets. Someone may be very good at looking at numbers and math around gerrymandering and how to look at that. Someone else might be a specialist in social media and how to have a conversation online and really make something go viral. So it's a meeting of the minds where it just, you get this sense not only that people are with you and that this fight is happening, but also that it's really kind of this organization that doesn't really exist, but with this almost organism of different activists and people who really care about our political system working in their particular way and working in concert. So to have everyone here together is kind of like symphonic. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there some people that you've met or heard from today that you can tell me about?
So I'm still moved by, what was his name? It was Robbie. Who's the Reggie Gibson.
Yep.
He was unbelievable. And I spoke with Katie Fahey after her panel. And I'll be honest, that's all. That's it. I mean, I know Josh Silver, who's the director of Represent Us, so I had several chats with him, but more to do.
Absolutely. And we were talking about going out in Nashville, exploring the town.
Yeah.
It's a good kind of energy here with a lot going on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And there are also, I don't know if
representative in one of the gerrymandering panels earlier, Burchett, slaughter his name right there, but it was fascinating. The other thing I really enjoy about the summit is it's apolitical. You have people across party lines. And so he's a Republican senator in Tennessee, and he was talking about what it's like to actually be in a political system, where essentially once you're in, it's really hard to get clarity on you get disconnected from home because you have lobbyists around you, you have people encouraging you, telling you that you're so smart, and why don't you sign this and do this, and all of a sudden you're disconnected. So it's interesting to hear that this isn't us or them. It's just across the board. The system is best.
Right. And is that something that you're able to talk about with people who disagree with you and they start agreeing with you because they realize they gotta get out of their partisan side?
Yeah, I think, what I've learned, because I used to go door to door or register voters or have any kind of political conversation. And what I learned is language is the most important thing, because if I were to say, the conversation I had growing up at home was end citizenship or campaign finance. That framing is not popular with my friends who are conservatives or like you, liberal, whatever. But if you were to say something like corruption, the language that you use matters because people tend to agree on corruption. It's the same when going door to door during one of the last primary elections in California. I went all over the state, Stanislaus, East Side, kind of Central Valley, which is very agricultural. And usually, when we got into a political conversation, it became about the people, the party. Once you started talking about policy, and even below that, just very basic human concerns. Starting there, things people care about, their family, having enough money, education, healthcare, basics. You don't put any labels on it. You can build up from there and start talking about policy. So I think what happens is it's kind of like people get caught up in the branding of politics. And that really is, it doesn't allow us to have a meaningful conversation about what the implications of certain policies are or what needs to happen in kind of larger changes. It just becomes about us and them.
Right. And so it sounds like, because you've been canvassing, knocking on doors, all of this, talked to people in the movement, gotten involved, you've been working on it for a while now.
Yeah.
Did you have like a light bulb moment of like, this is an issue that you really need to get into?
Well, I remember I read People's History of the United States.
All right.
So that must have been freshman year of college, maybe high school, I can't remember. But again, it was always the conversation at home. It was always, well, when we talk about politics, the state of affairs, I mean, George W. was in his office at the time, and they'd be like, but none of this matters because of corruption. And I remember hearing about Represent Us. I'd been working with Bernie Sanders campaign at the time on the campaign trail, participating wherever they need to be, doing a lot of social media as well. And I heard about this organization and just got very curious. And I reached out, offered to like do a post. I think I just started retweeting or looking at content. And ultimately, I got in touch with Josh. And again, myself, what appealed to me was that kind of sustained approach. It was a solution that actually worked, a long-term solution that was methodical, and I've since sat with Alex, who's one of the directors of
Policy?
yeah, and
Scabbins are policy.
he's just genius. He's genius. And I love how the idea of finding grassroots organizations doing the work and supporting them and providing them with assistance, whether it be financial or legal support, whatever's needed, and really kind of empowering grassroots movements across the country, regardless of party, for the issue. That was a game changer. So, and then I pulled my parents into it.
Yeah, how did you convince your parents into it?
I essentially said, my stepdad had always been talking about politics. I said, well, I found something. And he was like, that's great. And I'm like, yeah, it is great. What are you going to do about it? Because it's not enough to just sit and complain. You got to take an action. She said, put your money where your mouth is. I'll help you organize an event. Let's invite as many people as possible. I'm not going to lie. At that point, I kind of backed off and they took care of it. But now my parents are involved. I have friends who are involved in the organization. Because again, I think this is the issues that we're discussing here right now, everyone cares about, regardless of party. We all know the way the political system works does not reflect more of the people. I can pick something very simple like climate change. We have 99 scientists versus one. And then you go over to Fox News or CNN, it doesn't matter, and you have a climate scientist and a climate change denier. That does not represent, that's 50-50, that does not represent what people care about and what they feel in this country. I don't know why I went there, but that's what popped up.
Yeah. So one of the, it sounds like, you mentioned throwing an event, tweeting, retweeting things, because you have followers in a network, so that's a way that you can help. Having events and volunteering, there are a lot of different ways to get involved. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, have you seen you sharing things, creating this other life-built moment for other people, has it sparked other conversations?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing I've learned is telling someone what they should think never works. Inviting someone to join you for something is different. It can be an invitation. I think the way we talk about politics in this country is incredibly confrontational. Most of us don't know what we're talking about. It becomes little snippets we've heard or whatever. I think just sharing, for me, what's been most effective is sharing what I care about and why I am kind of the purpose behind it. And then really creating a space to have, to invite someone into that space to have an open conversation with no judgment. And, in terms of this, I live in Los Angeles now, and Josh and the team in LA quite a bit, and host events. And I usually I think of specific people who I've heard express concern or an interest in something, around working with parents. And I'll just say, that's all it takes. And usually people, once they hear particularly some of the facts that Congress doesn't vote in line with
Most of Americans.
right, and 87% of districts, because of gerrymandering, the vote is already determined before you even pass it. That's completely uncompetitive. So once people start hearing these facts, then you gotta do something.
Well, is there anything you'd want to say to people at home who aren't here?
Yeah, Martin's barbecue is amazing. I think I have to take a nap. I'm gonna have a coma after that one. But come join us next year. It's so much fun.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Okay guys, this next video is going to be some footage from the summit that has been taking place in Tennessee. I'd have to check it and give you the exact day, but I believe it may have actually been going on today. It's going to take about 3 minutes before the video starts, so please hang tight, and we're going to get to see some of the speakers at this event. Thank you.
I greet you with the words of Walt Whitman, the first true poet of American democracy, who says, I cannot too often repeat that democracy is a word, the real gist of which still sleeps quite unawakened. It is a great word, whose history, I suppose, remains unwritten, because that history has yet to be enacted. In this story, truth is a joke, democracy a punchline. In this story, our leaders' mouths are dangerous, wound us, gangrenous, disease us, numb us, dumb us into ethical hypnosis and civic sleep. In this story, we keep our ears budded so we did not hear the call, the shrill call of blood and soil. Say we did not hear the white supremacist rising howl of Jews will not replace us. In this story, we keep our heads down and swear we did not see tiki torches, not see the night, did not see the police putting holes into all those black boys. This is the story where we continue to other each other, scapegoat one another for our generational failings. This is the story in which Congress is Robin Hood gone wrong, redirecting billions that could have helped the ragged to give to the already rich. In this story, many of us play the ignorant, the oblivious one that ignores, who at this point in the story begin thumbing screens for distraction and turns the music up to the maximum, pretending not to hear the darkness growling. Yes, sisters and brothers, this story is seductive. It doesn't always yell at us, no. It sometimes whispers in the recesses of our minds. And it says, come, tell me your prejudices and I will darken. Come, let my arms embrace and harbor your harms and I will darken. Come, let me turn those harms into howl, foul you into whirlwind of machete and bullet, and I will darken. And it whispers until we barely notice how it lives inside us, how it divides us, how it drives us to reduce each other to thin stereotype scrims of race, religion, politics, gender. And sometimes when someone shows us a mirror, we see our contorted faces and catch ourselves swaying in the swelling spell of it and become ashamed and are tempted to run in fear of our own ugly. But we must not run, for we have done that before. For this story is not new, for we have lived this before. And we know there have always been and will always be this darkness in our country. But also, there has always been those who would look into that darkness and muster the courage to stand against it. There has always been those who refuse to play the oblivious, the one that ignores. Yes, there has always been those who would rewrite themselves a new character and become she who sees and rises up. He that voices the better angels of our nature. They that demand our body politic fight the viruses of our worst isms, our sexism, racism, ageism, colorism, culturalism, reductionism, fascism. Those who demand that our nation embraces its better isms, egalitarianism, altruism, volunteerism, humanism, and demands we further create and coin other isms. You have the right to remain black and unshot ism. You have the right to not be sexually assaulted and harassed ism. You have the right to exist and to thrive ism. You have the right to have your voice heard ism. I will stop turning my back on your pain ism. I will stand up for the human rights of another ism. Yes. We have always had and will always need those who, like you, work little by little to heal this too wounded nation with a democratized form of love, which will demand a positive new patriotism, a patriotism you cannot stitch into clothing and make into a slogan. One that goes beyond, I love America, but one that says, I love Americans. A patriotism demanding we help all Americans who have fallen to stand. A patriotism that means caring enough to make sure that a child's hunger goes away so she can sleep at night. A patriotism that knows it's right to ensure that all can afford higher education, knows that a great nation must enrich each citizen intellectually, for to do so effectively raises its people's collective capacity to think and consider critically, so that our democracy doesn't fall prey to a clownish and perverted brown-shirted inanity, to a hypnotic and demagogic insanity. A patriotism that is deeper than ham-fisted swagger, deeper than bullying bluster or surface or flag waving, but a patriotism that is a lived civic virtue, demands accountability, demands integrity, is ethically behaving, a patriotism demanding its leaders' allegiance to its people, saying full-throatedly and actively displaying that every American is well worth the effort of saving. And it is at times like this you can feel it, sense it, that vague atmospheric nascent flickering of true democracy. Sometimes glance it like the humped backs of dolphins breaking above the ocean of what is possible. Hear it through the din and the clatter of the media noise, asking us to wield our social shield and swords and civic will to maintain and build a true republic through which we all can heal. Listen to that voice today that called us here. Remember it as we write the new narrative of inclusion, a narrative in which we embrace self-reflection and introspection, embrace our discomfort for equity and deeper connection, so we can honestly listen to and open to each other's different perspectives and learn to engage beyond our political rage, so we can practice true democracy. We need a narrative that says sharing power empowers us all, a narrative in a new world in which we break down these walls between us so we can hold hands, heal each other of these broken legs we've learned to limp with, and finally move forward together, step by trembling step, into that welcoming, eye-aching light, into an America that reflects and shines with the best truth of who we know we are, what our democracy can be: expansive, accepting, beautiful, and bright.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome actor Max Carver and Represent Us Digital Director Jen Johnson.
Wow. Let's hear it again for Reggie Gibson. I am so excited to be here in Smashville, smashing corruption today. Yeah. So we have some incredible speakers, guests who have plenty of insight and hope for how to move forward fighting corruption in this country.
That's right. And our next speaker has done more than just about anyone in Nashville to increase civic participation and voting rights. Last year's Nashvillian of the Year and co-founder of the Equity Alliance, please give a warm welcome to Tequila Johnson. Tequila! That's my girl.
Good morning, and welcome to Tennessee, where despite having the 7th wealthiest zip code in the United States, we rank 45 in voter turnout and voter participation. Where despite having a very diverse population, if you look at our electorate, it is over 90% white male. And so you may ask, well, what does all that have to do? Well, we have some good hot chicken here in Nashville. So enjoy your time here. Oftentimes we hear the phrase, bet on black women. It is something that has taken over and shifted the culture of politics in the United States. Bet on black women. We've known since the history of slavery what black women can do. You give us bitter collard greens, baby, we'll add a little pork fat and give you a delicacy. And we have done that. But I'm here to talk about something more serious. It's not just enough to bet on black women. We have to invest in black women. Because despite the results of all the elections where we see black women turned out in droves, despite us having an organization founded and led by black women where we were able to register over 85,000 people to vote, we do so with little to no investment. In fact, we don't even have full-time staff. In fact, I just ran on this stage because I had to rush to get my daughter to the daycare center. And early this morning, I had to get up and turn in a program portfolio for my job, my full-time job. So it's not enough to just to bet on black women, but we have to invest in black women. We have to invest in black women-led organizations because we know what's best for our communities. We've led our communities since the beginning of time. If you look at our families, they're being led and structured by a black woman. But if you also look at statistics, you see that the black infant mortality rates are increasing. Black women are constantly overworked, underpaid, and stressed. If you look at the statistics, you see that black women are also more likely to suffer from heart disease. And we ask why, because everybody, including our election process, wants to bet on black women, but no one is willing to invest in black women to the capacity where we don't have to work 3 and 4 jobs. We don't have to worry about how we're going to do this important work and how we're going to feed our children. Black women-led organizations are funded at 3% in comparison to white female-led organizations that focus on civic work. That is a problem because we see that we are not expanding our electorate. Despite all the efforts, we are not expanding. Everyone's looking so sad. We're not expanding, but that is because we aren't shifting where we invest. And so you may say, well, what is the bright side of that? The bright side is you have a ton of very talented black female leaders that are willing to put the work in and just waiting for the support. Not just the financial support, but the support to say that we trust you. We trust your leadership. We trust your vision. And we are here to uplift you. And so you can do so by finding out about these organizations, like my organization, the Equity Alliance, here in Tennessee, statewide organization. Register 86,000 people to vote. 86,000 black people to vote. And so I leave you with this. As Fannie Lou Hamer said, I feel no ways tired. So I don't want you guys to feel sorry for me or feel bad for me. What I want you to do is feel inspired. Because we're not giving up. We're not giving up on ourselves. We're not giving up on our country, and we're not giving up on our future. And together, we know that black women have for a long time been shifting the tide. And right now, this country is headed on a nosedive. The plane is going down. So I ask you to support a black woman that is in the driver's seat with their hand on the lever, and all we need is the support of our co-conspirators, because I don't believe in allies, I believe in co-conspirators, to put your hand on ours and help us pull that lever up and shift that plane forward. So thank you all. Welcome to Tennessee. I love you all, and I'm ready to unrig this system together.
Please welcome Harvard professor Larry Lessig.
So you know something that is true. You're here, we're all here, because you know something that is true. You know we live in the greatest democracy that never was. promised to us by a Constitution, the oldest living written Constitution there ever was, a promise that to this day has not been kept, a promise that must be kept now because it is too long. We have been waiting too long for this promise to be delivered. It has been 20 years since a clear majority of Americans have acknowledged that climate change is real and that we are responsible, yet Congress has not done a single thing to address that problem comprehensively. America has the most expensive healthcare system in the world, with 25% of its budget committed to administrative costs and 12% of Americans still not covered, yet Congress still can't figure out whether pre-existing conditions ought to deny someone the right to healthcare in America. And the engineers tell us that America's infrastructure deserves the grade of a D, that we must spend $1.5 trillion by 2025 to make America safe again. Yet the closest that our Congress can get to the number 1.5 trillion is the $1.6 trillion in a tax cut that they gave primarily the corporations and the super rich. And, oh, by the way, Congress has plenty of thoughts and prayers for the thousands of families who have lost children to crazy men with unregulated guns. These problems were not caused by a single man, however great his ego may be. These problems are the consequence of a democracy that does not represent us. And if we're going to solve these problems, these and a million other problems, we must find a way to get our leaders to focus our nation on this, the first critical problem that we as a republic face, the need finally for a democracy. And so, I ache when I hear our candidates speak. They speak of the beautiful things, as if we already have a democracy. They tell us about single-payer health care, or a Green New Deal, or a higher minimum wage, or free college for all. They speak as if winning is enough, as if getting more votes means getting what you want. They speak as if the promise of our Constitution was already real, as if this democracy was not actually rigged, but you know better. You at the Unrigged Summit, you know better, and you know the truth. We need to get them to speak. Now, I am so proud that my friend John Sarbanes was able to convince Nancy Pelosi to make fundamental reform the first issue that this Congress addressed. H.R. 1 was a critical step in the arc of this wannabe democracy. But we need to speak now not about H.R. 1. We need to speak about POTUS 1. POTUS 1. We need to get candidates to make the same commitment that Nancy Pelosi made to make fundamental reform the first thing they do as the next president of this United States. We need them. We need them to tell us what is in that package of reform, and we need candidates with the courage to stand before America and say, no more billionaires, no more corporations, public funding through citizens of political campaigns. Because if they don't start speaking like this now, America is just not going to hear it. Here is the one issue that we all agree upon, but so often on the campaign trail, it is just an afterthought, but it cannot be an afterthought. Reform must be the first thought, because you know none of these beautiful things are possible without reform being first. But here's the thing, if it were the first thought, if the candidates spoke openly and honestly and repeatedly about the need for fundamental reform, then we would win. then the next president could give us what we have been fighting for. But if they don't talk about reform as the first thought, if it's just one issue among many, a box ticked off so they don't tick off people like you and me, then we will not win this reform. Almost 11 years ago to this day, Barack Obama stood before the AFL-CIO and said, quote, "If we're not willing to take up this fight, the fight to change the way Washington works, then real change, change that will make a lasting difference in the lives of ordinary Americans, will keep getting blocked by the defenders of the status quo." Barack Obama was right then. His words are right now. And if we're not willing to get our leaders to take up this fight now, then the ugliness and the hopelessness of this status quo is not going to change. That is real. You know this. You know it is true. You know something that is true, so you must teach this to them in everything you do, not just for us, but for the millions of Americans who deserve, finally, a democracy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our next speaker pulled off a massive upset when she became elected to the North Dakota legislature last November. She built her campaign fighting for public health and voting rights. She championed efforts to unrig the system for years as an activist and now as an elected official. Please welcome Ruth Buffalo.
Nido Shadzi Nakbaga O, Madashi Mia Adesh Heads, Mabe Sigids Madzigidads Nakbaga O. I felt it's very important that I acknowledge also the land that we stand on and the tribes that originally lived on what is present-day Tennessee. The Catawba, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Muskogee Creek, Natchez, Shawnee, and Yuchi. I am a citizen of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation, and it's such an honor to be here with you today and to stand on sacred ground. I am a product of surviving genocide on American soil. At the age of 5 years old, my mom was sent to a boarding school where she was punished for speaking her language. Young boys had their hair cut for being Native American. They were not able to practice their religion freely. I was born in 1977. The Religious Freedom Act did not come to be until a year later, 1978. So I was born into a culture where my indigenous people could not practice their religion freely. So I wanted to make note of that quickly. And aside from that, I believe that I don't consider myself a politician. You know, I consider myself more of a political healer, because in order to unrig these oppressive systems that are in place, we must first look at our history and find ways to bridge the gaps, to change the narrative, to find and dig deep into the true history of this country. So I'm a survivor of genocide. I wasn't supposed to be here today, but we are resilient and thriving in spite of a concerted effort to wipe us out. I believe my ancestors were targets of genocide for profit from the land and resources we were in their way. It's important for us to bring remembrance and healing to our communities where genocide occurred on what is present-day American soil. In order to dismantle and diversify these corruptive systems that have existed here since the inception of the United States, we must first acknowledge our history to begin to come together to heal. Also looking at the history of our presidents. In Minnesota, one of our presidents called for the hanging of the Dakota 38+2. That many of our communities still are thriving to survive and to heal. And so I want to say that I'm thankful for being elected into office, but there's still so much work to be done. I am born and raised in North Dakota, and North Dakota is where I will die. That is where my ancestors once lived. I'm currently the only Native American in the legislature, and it's an uphill climb, but I feel that there is political healing happening. 7 out of the 8 bills that I introduce have passed both Senate and House. But I believe this work is not just me doing this work alone. It is, of course, from the strength of my ancestors, our ancestors, the future generations, people who want to challenge the status quo, who want change, who want to take a stand against corruption, who want equal representation, who want voter access, who want a better community, who want prosperity for all North Dakotans. So I was a volunteer that worked towards getting corruption out of politics. I saw firsthand what money does in politics at every level of government, from city, county, tribal, and federal. There's so much work to be done, but I want to encourage you to be courageous. Take courage. Reach out to others who are different from you. If you're at a table, look around and see, is there somebody from this community that needs to be here? Why are they not here? Because gone are the times where we have people who can speak for us. We must be able to tell our stories, and we must be able to lift others up so that they can share their stories. At the young age of 10, I saw in our small rural community how healthcare needed to be fixed. We almost lost one of my younger sisters because she was misdiagnosed. And then 25 years later, we lost my baby sister who did not survive a car crash from a drunk driver. So these different life occurrences forced us to dig down deep and fight for policy change, not only for our family, but for all people, because we saw that nothing was being done. And so again, I don't consider myself a politician. I just consider myself somebody who's willing and able to take a healthy risk and to stand up and speak for others. I am also a big sister, and so I think that has something to do with the path that I'm on right now. In my indigenous culture, we are matriarchal and matrilineal people, and so I also want to acknowledge the missing and murdered indigenous women who go missing in our lifetime. Native American, American Indians are expected to experience violence 10 times more than the average any other group. 80% of us will experience violence at one time in our life. And the Violence Against Women Act is under attack as we speak. So we need everybody, and I like what the other speaker said, that we don't need allies, we need co-conspirators. We need people who are willing to stand with us. Stand with us. Madzagirads, thank you, Nakbaga Om.
Trevor Potter founded the Campaign Legal Center 17 years ago to fill a critical space in the election and campaign finance reform field. The movement needed an accountability watchdog and top-shelf legal expertise. He probably did not know at the time that he would build a game-changing force in American democracy. I'm excited to introduce this A-list team for discussion of some of the latest and most important developments on democracy issues. Please welcome Campaign Legal Center's Trevor Potter, Aaron Klopak, and Paul Smith.
Good morning. So if you were here last year, you might remember a conversation, a really great conversation that Trevor had with Jennifer Lawrence about how easy it is to buy as much influence as possible in American elections today. So I have some good news and some bad news. I'll start with the bad news. You may have noticed that I'm not Jennifer Lawrence. Neither is Paul. But now the good news. There's a lot to be excited about in our democracy right now, and there's more interest in these issues than we've seen in a long time. Courts around the country are working to protect people's ability to vote. States are taking action to make our political system more transparent and elected officials more accountable. The House just voted to pass an incredibly comprehensive pro-democracy bill, and we are once again waiting to hear what the Supreme Court has to say about gerrymandering. Paul, the court was faced with this issue last year in the Wisconsin case, but it punted and failed to decide if even the most egregious cases of political gerrymandering are tolerable under our federal Constitution. That question is now before the court once again in two cases that were argued actually just a few days ago. You were on the front lines of the North Carolina case, but have been involved in this issue since 2003 when you argued one of the first big Supreme Court cases on this subject. What can you tell us about what's going on right now?
Well, first, just a brief comment about why gerrymandering is such a terrible feature of our democracy, why so much of this conference is about it. It is a way to fundamentally undercut democracy by deciding in advance that it doesn't matter how the people vote. Their governors have already decided they're going to hold power even if the majority of the rest of the jurisdiction decides they don't deserve to stay in power. It's not a new phenomenon. You could say it's as American as apple pie, but it is getting worse for two major reasons. One is the polarization of our electorate, which makes it easier to gerrymander, and the other is the technology and data available to those who are drawing these maps. And so what we've seen in this last decade is gerrymanders that don't flip even in the most wave-type elections of the kind we saw just in 2018. And the concern is now that we're on the precipice of a disaster as we have a new census coming and all the maps in the country are going to be redrawn. We're going to have people all over the country, legislators all over the country, imitating the incredibly brazen North Carolina legislature in what they did in 2016 to draw the map the congressional map that's at issue in the Supreme Court right now. You wonder, why doesn't the Supreme Court fix this problem? It's not like anybody thinks it's constitutional to engage in gerrymandering. It's obviously unconstitutional because it's hard to imagine any practice more inconsistent with our basic constitutional commitments to democracy and popular will. The issue's always been, can they find a standard that allows them to identify those maps that are such extreme outliers that they need to be invalidated? And we're hoping that the court finally, after multiple tries, will agree that 5 justices will get around a standard and agree to it this year in one of the 2 cases that are pending.
Speaking of those cases, Paul, do you have any predictions about how the court might rule?
Well, I don't like to make predictions about the court in general, but particularly in front of a crowd this size. I spent some time trying to figure exactly what the best phrase is. We all came away, I think those of us, lawyers involved in these 2 cases from Maryland and North Carolina, somewhat encouraged that there was a way to count to 5, as they say. We have 4 very strong justices who understand the need to rein in gerrymandering. That's Sotomayor, Kagan, Ginsburg, and Breyer. And interestingly, there were 2 other justices, the Chief Justice and the newest justice, Justice Kavanaugh, who I would have to describe as taking the issue very seriously, realizing that it's a problem, searching seemingly quite seriously for the ability to find a standard. They were, of course, being hectored by Justice Alito and Justice Gorsuch not to do that, but there is a way that maybe we can win these cases. It's hard to be completely confident, but hope springs eternal.
And if that doesn't happen, are there any other things happening out there that give you hope about the future of this problem?
If and when we finally know that the Supreme Court is not going to help solve this problem, the fight's got to go on against gerrymandering, and it will. There's Plan B and Plan C. Plan B is the popular uprising that we're seeing all around the country to try to deal with gerrymandering and force the politicians to give up this power, this abuse. We had 5 states just last year pass constitutional amendments to rein in gerrymandering in their states. We were very happy at the Campaign Legal Center to be consulting on all of those in terms of how they're phrased, the technicality of doing it right, because you can do it wrong. But those states are all in a much better place because the people have spoken, and people are going to continue to speak if and when the Supreme Court says we're not helping. Clearly, the Independent Redistricting Commission is the right way to handle this problem ultimately, because you take power completely out of the hands of people who have self-interest in it and give it to people who know what they're doing. Another nice development is H.R. 1, which, if finally passed, would, for congressional elections, make every state use independent commissions. And then there's Plan C, which was illustrated in Pennsylvania last year. There are state constitutions which can be enforced in state courts. The state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania took an extreme gerrymander and substituted for it a very, very fair congressional map and solved the problem in that way.
Well, Trevor, I know states are also taking the lead to tackle some of the biggest campaign finance problems that we're seeing today. Things like loopholes in disclosure laws that fail to account for the shift of political advertising to the internet, increasing opportunities for corruption through the massive spending we're seeing by corporations and special interests on elections. What are some of the most significant developments that you're seeing throughout the country to address those problems?
Aaron, what we saw in 2016 is foreign actors exploiting loopholes in our campaign finance laws to covertly flood the internet with paid political ads. The Mueller report emphasized that. There is a fair amount of proof and charges brought on that. Since 2016, we have worked with members of Congress on the Honest Ads Act, and we have petitioned the Federal Election Commission to engage in rulemaking on this. The bad news is that both Congress and the FEC are deadlocked on this issue and others and have done nothing, absolutely nothing, since 2016. So at the federal level, we are going into the next election just as vulnerable as before. Now, you've seen that there are some platforms like Facebook that have taken steps towards transparency. First, I think there's a problem when we outsource basic rules for our democracy to private companies, because their interests lie ultimately with management. And the second problem is they've all adopted different rules, so it's a lot easier to game the system. Now, the good news is that states aren't waiting for the federal government to address this. States around the country, New York, Washington State, Maryland, California, Vermont, Wyoming, they have all passed legislation to update their campaign finance disclosure rules and requirements for the digital age. And what I think this will do is put pressure on Congress to act, and we will see the private companies as well beginning to realize they might be better off with a federal standard than a patchwork of state standards.
Right. Well, it's definitely encouraging to see these developments on the disclosure front. But what about all of the spending we're seeing now that the Supreme Court has said it's no problem, no corruption when corporations spend gazillions of dollars on elections? Is there even anything states can do about all that spending after Citizens United?
There is, and let's start with the point that Larry made, citizen financing systems. They are the single best way to prevent corruption, restore voices of ordinary Americans, and create a government that looks and responds to the country as a whole. They are the best alternative we have to big super PACs and C4 money and the dominance of wealthy candidates.
Are there any particular examples of public financing systems that you think are particularly stand out as models of success?
Yes, the good news is there are. Since 2015, there have been 9 different citizen financing, public financing systems introduced around the country. The best known, of course, is Seattle, which in 2017 held its first election under its new Democracy Voucher Program. A great name when the Republicans say that public financing is vouchers for candidates. I think responding with a democracy voucher program is a good way to flag it correctly. In Seattle, city residents were given 4 $25 vouchers to contribute to candidates in city elections. For the first time, every resident in Seattle had the practical ability to contribute to candidates, and many did so. Liz Dupuy, who is here and there she is, and going to be speaking on a number of panels this weekend, can tell you more about it. What we do know from the research is that in 2017, Seattle contributors were younger and more diverse than in previous elections, and contributors came from all over the city rather than concentrating in just wealthy neighborhoods. There are similar findings in the New York matching program system in terms of new geographic diversity because of that system. And that's what democracy should be all about.
Okay, so let's imagine, just for a second, that we have an American utopia where there's no gerrymandering, full transparency about how money is spent to influence our elections, corporations and special interests are no longer dominating the policy issues because there's been a shift to public financing programs. There's still a really important piece missing from this puzzle. Paul, what developments are we seeing that ensure citizens are all actually able to exercise their right to vote without the party in power rigging the rules to advantage their voters?
Well, Aaron, the truth is we're seeing continuing, increasing, to use the same word again, brazen efforts to suppress voting for partisan advantage with ever new, more creative theories about how to do that all over the country. I could give you examples for the next 20 minutes. They'd have to pull us off the stage, though. So I'll just give you a couple of examples of things we've been working on recently. In Georgia, we're working with a coalition of groups who succeeded in ensuring that voters who had wrongly been flagged as potential non-citizens would be able to cast regular ballots in the election in 2018. In Texas, just a few weeks ago, we had a very similar phenomenon. The Secretary of State sent out a memo to all the county registrars with a list of 200,000 people who were registered voters that he said were suspicious because when they got their driver's license years before, they had not been citizens. Now they're registered voters. How did that happen? They got naturalized. So this was a system designed to send a notice out to all those people. If they didn't come down and reprove their citizenship within 30 days, they would have been purged from the voting rolls. And presumably, most of them are of foreign extraction. That's why they needed to be naturalized, most of them Latinx, one supposes. And then there's North Dakota that we just heard about from Ruth with its really odious voter ID law, which we're seeking to enjoin right now. The law that targeted Native Americans because it suddenly required street addresses which are not used routinely on the reservations, all in an effort to try to suppress the vote that the majority of the legislature doesn't like. The Democrats in North Dakota happen to be the Native Americans. So there's a lot going on.
Well, those battles are truly important. I have to say, I think it's really disheartening that we're still litigating this issue 50 years after the Voting Rights Act. Are there any other developments that give you hope about protecting the franchise?
You want me to say something encouraging now? Okay. Well, there actually is a lot of stuff going on. I mean, and a lot of it is, again, the people stepping up and forcing the system to do a better job. In Michigan and Nevada, just this past election, the voters passed a ballot measure requiring automatic voter registration. And in Michigan and Montana, the voters passed initiatives requiring same-day election day registration. These are really important developments. And then there's Maine with its wonderful introduction of ranked choice voting to elect a member of Congress. Ranked choice voting improves the system in a whole variety of ways. It lowers negative campaigning. It gives voters more choice. It assures that the majority rules in the end. It is a truly wonderful system which we need to spread across the country as much as possible. And then there's the progress we're seeing on the re-enfranchisement of people who have past convictions. We saw the amazing vote in Florida, over 70%. It's true right now that the legislature is trying to nullify that by requiring everybody to pay all their past fines and fees. That law, the new form of poll tax, will be challenged, and I hope successfully. The other thing that's going on in this particular area is that there are millions of people in this country who actually have ex-felons who actually have the right to have their voting restored and don't know it. the states don't have any particular interest in telling them about it, frankly. And so one of the things we're doing is we have a Restore Your Vote campaign where we're going down into the communities where these people live, training volunteers to go out and find these people and say, look, you need to go register. And we found hundreds and then thousands of such people in Alabama, for example, who got to vote in the Doug Jones, Roy Moore election and have these amazing stories to tell about what it's like to have your voting rights restored in your life, be able to vote for the very first time. So there's lots of good stuff going on. There's work to be done, obviously, and that's why we're all here, but we shouldn't all be discouraged all the time.
Well, I know we're I think, at the end of our time, but really quickly, you know, I've been working in this space for quite a while, and I can't think of another time in recent memory when democracy issues have been so prominent in everybody's talking about it all the time. Trevor, what do you think is so unique about this particular moment?
I think there are a couple of developments coming together right now. First, there have been enough years and enough elections since decisions like Citizens United and Shelby County, which gutted the Voting Rights Act, that those basic wrong-headed decisions, the consequences of them, are coming into full view. People understand the problems with thinking of it that way. Then there have been a couple key electoral developments too, the 2016 foreign interference, the election results where you saw such a stark difference between the votes won and the seats obtained in states like North Carolina and Wisconsin with the gerrymandering battles, then Georgia, North Dakota over the voting rights battles, Florida over the ex-felon re-enfranchisement. All of these have put democracy issues front and center in citizens' minds. At the federal level, we have the new energy that has come from H.R. 1, a bill which includes a whole string of reforms that have been proposed over the years. The Honest Ads Act, the Disclose Act, FEC reform, redistricting reform, voting rights reform, and much more. So I think that's really an exciting bill and pulls everything together. At the state level, as we've discussed, there are a number of developments where citizens are taking things into their own hands. So I think we're now seeing more attention on democracy issues. I hope Larry is right that this is something that the presidential candidates will focus on, and we will have a chance to build momentum across the country going forward.
Okay,
thanks.
Well, I think that's a perfect hopeful note to end on. Thanks, everyone.
All right, I got my walk-on music. Our plenary panel today is called How They Won, and it features leaders from some of the most inspiring victories of 2018 in a discussion with actor Jennifer Lawrence. Yeah, you can be excited about it. You may have seen we also got pretty excited about it. We brought a chair out early. But before we get into that, because we're still setting the stage, I wanted to do a group activity. We actually have a game here at Unrig. And it's easy to find because it's on the back of your registration badge. So if you want to take a look at the back of your badge, there's a game called Unrig Moments Bingo. And I'm sure you're all familiar with bingo. You want to fill the whole thing up. Each of these blocks is something you can do here at the summit. And as you complete one of these things, you can add a sticker to it. You should have stickers in your badge. But since we are all about transparency here in democracy reform, there are actually some that you will need to get checked from the Unrig Moments team. They're wearing orange shirts or orange buttons, and those are the ones on the right side, so you'll need to have some oversight there. Thank you. So we are going to actually practice one of these today. There's one called taking a picture at the photo booth, pretty self-explanatory. And we're not at the photo booth here, but there are a lot of fun props. And Chris, our Unrig Moments manager, is going to pass them out to you so we can take a picture together here. As you'll see, fun props, mustaches, hats. I don't think he brought the hats. But what we're going to do is he's going to pass them out. If you don't have one because you're in the back, it's okay. You can pretend. So just think to yourself, I've got a top hat and monocle on, I'm being big money. Or patriotic, we have some patriotic hats, as you can see here. And we're gonna just take a picture here. So let's have everyone actually stand up. Thank you. Oh, you all look so great, ready to roll here. And I'm gonna take the picture as your photographer here. So let's do on the count of 3, unrig the system. 1, 2, 3, unrig the system. Okay, that was really awesome, you guys. I feel like there was something missing. You all were great, but I just feel like, do we have any more props, Chris? No, no more props. Okay, what if we get Jennifer Lawrence out here? Okay, let's take a selfie with Jennifer Lawrence. Hi. All right, here we go. Yeah, unrig the system. Great, thanks. Hi.
Am I here? Do I get a microphone? Should I take this microphone? Okay. Hi, hello Nashville, hello Unrig. The last time we were together, 14 months ago, I was so inspired. I left feeling hope, and I had no idea that our movement to unrig the system would score more victories than any time in American history. So I am so excited to meet you guys. I am so inspired by you. I cannot wait to learn from you. So let's just go down the line. Let's just introduce yourselves and your campaign, and then we'll get started with a series of questions. Keep your answers short so everybody gets a chance to speak. If anybody goes on, I'll just go, so let's just start down the line. Katie, do you want to start? Sorry, we have to share a microphone.
You know, no problem.
I'm not sharing mine.
Okay, that's fine. Hi.
Oh, wait, I have a microphone. Oh, no. Here.
Thank you.
I need two.
So I'm Katie Fahey, and I accidentally made a Facebook post that led to a political movement that ended gerrymandering in Michigan.
Woo!
Shout out to all the VNP volunteers in here, by the way. So
yeah,
they're over there.
I'm Kyle Bailey, and I was the campaign manager for the Committee for Ranked Choice Voting that won the nation's first ranked choice voting statewide law in the state of Maine.
Good morning. My name is Desmond Meade, and I led an effort in Florida to restore voting rights to 1.4 million returning citizens. And giving a special shout out to my Inclusive Democracy Project cohorts in the audience that help sustain this movement through sustaining me.
Good morning, everyone. I am Catherine Cantor. I'm from Utah. I led the Better Boundaries Redistricting Reform Initiative in Utah. And as we're going to talk further this morning, I just have one thing to say. If redistricting reform can happen in Utah, it can happen anywhere.
My name is Sean Sonker Nicholson. I was the campaign manager for the Clean Missouri campaign, which was a state legislative reform effort that included redistricting reform and a number of money and politics ethics reforms as well.
I'm Dina Butcher, and I'm a badass grandma from And there are a couple of other badasses out there. My cohort, Ellen Chafee, and Sarah Vogel, who was one of the founders of our North Dakotans for Integrity. We passed and initiated a constitutional measure addressing having an ethics commission, transparency in spending, and lobbying rules. We're very proud.
Okay, so let's get started. I've just got a few questions. I'll start with you, Katie. So what were 2 or 3 keys to your campaign success?
Yeah, so I was not in the political realm at all. I was actually doing like hopping in garbage cans and doing waste audits and sorting out recycling versus trash. And I think one of the first successes we had is that we viewed everyone as having a place in democracy and being a part of this movement. We basically crowdsourced our campaign, and we were like, oh, okay, we'll find a place for you no matter who you are. One of my favorite stories is about, I was determined to find a spot for everybody. Had this woman who's like, I just don't think I should be here. I don't have any skills. I don't have any hobbies. And I was like, what? You know, what do you like doing in your spare time? And she said, woodworking. And I was like, great, okay, all right. Men in the Constitution with woodworking. And what ended up happening is we tried to build the districts out of wood. They were too crazy and too gerrymandered, so they would have actually toppled on top of little children, would have been a bad idea. But when we ended up needing to cut 6,000 clipboards at a custom size, we had a discussion thinking about, you know what, we have wood carvers. And so we ended up throwing it in our Facebook group and saying like, hey, do you guys think we could make our own clipboards? We had people basically design a wedding registry at Home Depots and Lowe's across the state so people could reserve masonite wood, and then found warehouses and workshops that we could go to after hours to cut 6,000 clipboards for 10 cents each, and had these army of strangers who had never met in person meeting in a warehouse to cut wood clipboards. We cut 6,000 so every person could have a professional tool no matter where they lived in the state. All because we had a wood carver.
Nice. Kyle?
Yeah, you know, I think when it comes down to the one or two things that we did that sort of really worked for us in Maine and made a difference was we were the first, and so we decided to run a really smart stealth campaign. And we said, let's just put our heads down and go talk to voters and have one-on-one conversations and go door to door and be at every fair and festival we can be at and have those conversations. And what we found was that when we could reach someone and have that conversation, 65 to 70% of people, who, by the way, started a conversation most of the time not ever hearing about ranked choice voting before, into that conversation saying, oh, I support that, that's just common sense, why don't we do that? So running a really stealth campaign, putting our heads down, and doing the work, we didn't sort of get on the radar screen of our opponents until it was too late for them, but we built. I mean, you know, you can't build movements, they're either there or not, and there was a movement there, and we were able to organize it and lead it, and it was a people-powered movement that made a real difference because we weren't a top-down campaign, we were bottom-up, and that's what democracy initiatives have to be, because this is about people taking back the power, and that's what we proved in Maine, and many of these campaigns did as well.
Amazing. Desmond?
So there are a ton of reasons. It's hard to choose which ones are like more prominent, but I think two that do stick out is number one, being able to accept a person of color leading the campaign and being able to accept a person who is directly impacted remaining central to the campaign, I think was one key thing. And then the other one was not allowing our campaign to start out with labels, right? And a lot of times we tend to describe our campaign in such a way that creates division before we even start, and it limits who we can talk to or who can talk to us. And so I believe that because we were able to start out as an organic grassroots movement, it really allowed for people from all walks of life, from all political persuasions, to play key roles in our campaign. And that's why we won.
So having Jennifer Lawrence do an ad for us was actually really, really important. But in addition to that, for free, for free, which we needed because we didn't have a lot of resources. No, on a more serious note. So I think so much of it was having a clear message that spoke to people who belong to the majority party in Utah. And in Utah, you probably know that's the Republican Party. We are a very red state. We have a supermajority legislature. Every statewide seat is held by a Republican. We have a Republican trifecta. We're very red. Other states are that same way, you know, on the liberal side. Places like that, it can be really hard to convince people that redistricting reform, anti-gerrymandering reform is something they want, because they could see that, well, my team's winning right now. Why would I, you know, yield that advantage? And so it's critically important that you find a message that connects to those people. And in Utah, in addition to Jennifer Lawrence, it was Ronald Reagan, because Ronald Reagan was a redistricting reformist.
believe it or not. There's all sorts of quotes he had about gerrymandering being a national disgrace because it created a conflict of interest when legislators were drawing their maps all by themselves, right? And so we were able to use the words of this like conservative icon to connect to people who otherwise might think they shouldn't be in favor of our cause. And that was critically important to our success.
Picking up on what Catherine said, things like ethics, accountability, transparency, fairness, these are not partisan issues. Opponents will sometimes try to make them partisan because if they can get everyone to their partisan corners and make these fights tribal, then they don't have to actually talk about the issues and what's actually at stake. But we won because the folks in Jefferson City are out of touch with where regular people are at. And in a state where Donald Trump won by 19 points, we won by 24. And we did that by putting in the work and by talking about real issues and how big money, how unfairness, how protecting politicians from their own voters and sticking them into super safe districts, that doesn't serve you whether you're from a teeny tiny town like where I grew up or whether you live in Kansas City where I live now. So we can act and we can work with confidence that we're on the right side of things and the voters are with us.
Like Utah, North Dakota is very red, and we also unseated the only Democrat in the election that our initiated measure won by 8 points. And I credit that to the fact that we didn't bring politics into it either. It was every person being tapped into their righteous indignation about something that had happened to them that was either because they felt there was corruption or they had read stories, be it statewide or nationally, of how our transparency was lacking in state government and how laws were passed in the previous session. And I will also say that I think we cleverly packaged a label, a brand, that was given to us by my grandson, my brilliant grandson, who almost had a perfect score on his ACTs, but that's beside the point. His friend happened to see an early brochure of ours, and he asked, "Is that your grandma?" And I said, Owen said, "Yes." And he said, "She's badass." That's how we got our label, and it played well. It was a fun thing to do, and I do think as we traveled, as Ellen and the other BASs, bags, traveled the state on the byways and highways, sampling the best sausages made in the Germans from Russia area and the best caramel rolls and so on, and talked with people, that they found us to be authentic. At our age, we have nothing to gain. We have no political agenda. And both Ellen and I are losers in political campaigns on either side of the aisle. So I think the authenticity and our honesty in wanting to make North Dakota a better place for a grandkid did the trick.
My next question is just, what were 2 or 3 of your biggest obstacles or challenges?
For us, when we first started, the political establishment, and honestly the nonprofit establishment, would not give us the time of day. Everybody said, what are you doing? Like, we've got this covered. You're going to ruin democracy for everybody. And it was really eye-opening, and it was hard at first because you had to be really courageous in knowing that you have to show up in order for these things to change. Lobbyists, special interests, politicians do not have the incentive because they're currently operating in the status quo to be the ones driving that change, or if they are, you might want to be suspicious. And so being able to show up every day was the way that we overcame that.
I think in Maine, what my experience was working on ranked choice voting, the biggest challenge wasn't the opposition, although it became more of a challenge as we went on and had to restore the law after the legislature repealed what voters had approved. We had to deal with the politicians in Augusta more, but then we fortunately went back to the ballot and went to the voters. the biggest challenge early on in our effort was overcoming inertia. You know, I equate some of this work to rolling a boulder up a mountaintop. You know, we know what we can achieve, but the cynics and the naysayers are so present in our society, and all of us feel so, even those of us who are here and passionate about this work and excited about it, it's easy to be cynical, right? That, you know, you just can't fix it. It's just broken. I want it fixed, but, you know, it'll never be less negative. It'll never be. And so overcoming that and having those one-on-one conversations with voters and seeing them sort of light up when they understand that you can have more voice if you have more choice, and that the politicians shouldn't get to draw their own districts or decide how they're going to get elections or decide how they're going to fund their campaigns, that we, the people, have the power. You have the power, right? You have the power to change and shape your democracy and write the rules that govern it and that matter to every other decision. And so I think overcoming that inertia and inspiring people and telling people, you know, and giving them confidence to speak and say that we need ranked choice voting, and no politician, no pundit, no media consultant, nobody can tell us we're just going to do it, right? And just saying that and convincing people of that and building that is how we inspired and built a movement that overcame that inertia and got this done. And so I think that was, and then as I mentioned later on, we actually had to deal more with the politicians and repealing it, but we got it back to the people. And at that point, you know, the movement just continued to grow, and it's why we won ranked choice voting the second time at the ballot by a wider margin than we won the first. The movement sort of continues to grow because we've invested in people and in having those conversations on the ground.
So I hate to sound like a broken record, but you were right. You were right on with that. You know, I tell people all the time that, you know, I would say that 90% of the problems or the opposition that we face came from our side. You know, one of the things is, number one, I definitely can't blame like donors. But what I can blame are the people that stand between movements and donors, right? That have access to donors and feed donors information based on their perspective and not allow us to get access to it. And so for the first part of our campaign, we didn't have any money. You know, you would think that a movement to restore voting rights in Florida would excite donors in Florida to actually contribute, but not one penny. And we had to, without any money, get to the Supreme Court on our own. But thankfully that there's some smart people that's outside the state of Florida that quickly caught on to how important this was, that stepped up to the plate and was able to help shore it up. The other thing is that, you know, one of the hardest things to change is not our opponent, but really ourselves, right? And a huge challenge was getting people to actually look within themselves and understand, because we always hear, oh, if you keep doing the same thing over again, expecting different results, then you're insane, right? But yet you continue doing that. And when we came along and challenged folks to do things differently, they wanted to resist and basically just cast us aside. And so being able to overcome that and understand that, yes, people of color can lead. Yes, directly impacted people are more than just a voice, that we can be at the table and help create strategies to win, was an enormous challenge that was faced throughout the campaign. But the one thing that I know is that when your life is at stake, you know, you give a damn about what other people say. You know, and folks told me, no, things would never happen, it's impossible. But they could go home and the next day wake up and be able to vote. I couldn't. And 1.4 million other people couldn't either as well. So we weren't backing down. But being able to, I think what this campaign did do, and that I loved about it, it forces us to rethink who is the opposition. A lot of times we're pointing to the other side, saying they're the reason why we can't. But if we would take a moment and just look internally, we would see that the majority of the blocks or the obstacles that prevent us from creating a more inclusive democracy actually lies within us. And if we could just change that, we would win.
So one of our biggest obstacles started from the get-go, which was actually even getting on the ballot. So Utah is one of the hardest states in the country to get a citizens ballot initiative actually on the ballot because of these insane requirements that the legislature has imposed upon us, because I don't like citizen ballot initiatives, go figure. And so that was an incredibly hard challenge. And to give you a little context on that, since our state started back in 1896, we had had 4 successful ballot initiatives until 2018. So over 120 years, you had 4. And then in 2018, along with Better Boundaries, we had 3 ballot initiatives pass in that single year. So we almost doubled the number of initiatives that passed in the entire history of the state. That tells you how big 2018 was for grassroots activism, democracy reform. I mean, we've already in the panel right before us, we talked about how important nationally, 2018 was for a democracy reform movement. That was happening in Utah, both with redistricting and other issues. It was a watershed year. And it all happened just because we were tenacious and we made it happen. But that was really our biggest obstacle. Then, after we got on the ballot, second biggest obstacle was pushing against this false narrative that we were just a liberal, left-leaning, progressive faction of people trying to grab extra seats, right? That's what we were. And that was absolutely false. We were truly bipartisan, multi-partisan from the beginning, from everybody from the leaders to our advisory board, to our community partners, to the people we had who write op-eds for us, our staff, consultants, et cetera. We were truly bipartisan. But back to what Sean was saying, there are these easy sound bites, right? Oh, these are just a bunch of lefty-loos. And we had to consistently and very aggressively fight against that throughout the entirety of the campaign, continuing to this day.
There are a lot of ways to lose a ballot campaign. Yes, thousands. The Missouri experience was definitely born out of a lot of failures on this sort of issue. Like, there were fits and starts on the reform effort, both legislatively and at the ballot. Like, things didn't come together. We also learned a lot in those failures on reform and on other kinds of ballot campaigns about how to do it and how to do it poorly. So when we started our campaign, I had no idea that Michigan folks were thinking about redistricting reform, and then people in Utah and Ohio. Like, we were just like, something's wrong and we should fix this. And so, like, a community developed, and these conferences, things like this didn't happen 2-3 years ago is when we were getting started, as far as I'm aware. And I guess that's a long way of saying, like, this stuff is super hard, and there are technical barriers put in place by the people who have power now and the people who are not super excited about citizen democracy, everything from hurdles on the petition process to legal fights and other things you got to do. So I don't have like one great big thing that stands out other than just it's a slog, and years and years and years, and you get to come have a victory lap and be on stage like this. But yeah, so.
I think we overcame a bunch of condescending proctology patients. I filtered that for my daughters because I don't think they thought we would win, and many of them told me that from the get-go. But because they were, they're stationed around Bismarck, they don't get out among the people. But we had quite a coalition of people that were opposed to shining daylight on North Dakota politics. But what helped us over was the help we got from this group here. We had Represent Us contact us after we were in process of doing this, because we had heard South Dakota had done a similar thing in a statutory way. They stepped up and brought us together with Voters' Right to Know and End Citizens United, who were with us all the way through the campaign. When we would get down and somebody around the table would say, we could lose this, we'd be on a call and we'd get an answer, we'd get help, we'd get counseling. They'd bring the right expertise to the table. They would come to the state, and they did raise money for us. Thank God for that. In doing the signature gathering, there were lots of barriers to trying to get that done that have been put in place by those same proctology patients. And in many other ways, there are barriers, but those groups came to help us. And in this post-campaign, where we're still working through the legislature, we have more partners that have stepped forward. Campaign Legal Center, Take Back Our Republic, Rethink Media. They're on our side, and that helps so much. And thank all of you.
My next question is just what advice do you what is the best advice you could give for future campaigns, and what is the best advice you ever received?
I think the best advice I would give, I was a really reluctant leader. I did not, I was like, I just made the Facebook post. I don't need to be up here. But there's a real opportunity with being somebody who is at the forefront of these issues. You have the opportunity to stand up for others who can't be in the room at that time. And I think also being able to show that you aren't afraid and that a path can be forged. Remembering that every single person should be able to experience this. So by creating opportunities, nobody's happy with the state of politics, and just about everybody wants to make the world better. So as a leader, you get to help them understand how they get to be a part of changing the world to make it better. And if you take that seriously, then you will win. Because again, people want clean water for people. They want a better future. They want a better America. And we, every day, get to figure out how to help more of those people understand how they are critical to doing that. And I think some of the best advice I got was to trust my gut. Especially when you're hearing a lot of people tell you no, 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 yet you are living the reality of unaccountability and a future where you continue to not see progress in your state, and you have a whole city of people who is poisoned because of a law that could have been prevented by the citizens, people in Flint. You know it's not okay, and you are right. So do not let anybody else change your mind on that, and figure out how you can bring everybody else with you.
So when we started collecting signatures for ranked choice voting in November of 2014, some of the same experiences, but I think our opposition didn't sort of take us seriously. We ran a 2-year campaign, and we surprised a lot of people on election night, November of 2016, when we won with the second largest referendum vote of the people of Maine's history in 200 years. And I knew that there might be efforts in the legislature to sort of try to undermine the win or maybe tweak the law in ways that were not sort of in line with what Mainers had been requesting, and so we were sort of prepared for that. What I wasn't necessarily prepared for was an all-out war by the political opponents in our state capitol to try to undermine the law that was approved. So almost immediately after we won, opponents introduced repeal measures in the Maine legislature to entirely repeal the law the voters had just passed. And part of that is because in 200 years of Maine history and having referendum process for 100 years, the Maine legislature had never had the audacity to overturn something that the voters approved. They may have tweaked it or changed it or revised it or changed the funding formula or whatever. They never just gutted the whole thing and got rid of it. And they tried to. And I think they thought, well, we can just get it done, we'll pass it. And we were able to beat them back, and we won in the general session of the legislature and surprised them still. And so that opened up a whole other avenue of litigation and additional legal battles, additional legislative battles. And then in October 23rd of 2017, at midnight, by 3 votes in the Maine House, opponents repealed the entire ranked choice voting law that voters had approved the previous year. And they timed it in such a way that it would force us to go out and collect signatures in the middle of winter in Maine, thinking that there's no way we would ever get the signatures to put this thing on the ballot. Well, the next day we launched a people's veto campaign to overturn the legislature's veto and restore the law that voters had approved. And we collected over 80,000 signatures in 88 days in the middle of winter. over 1,000 volunteers. And then we were, by the way, we were in a situation, we were running a campaign to save ranked choice voting. We were also launching a voter education initiative to educate voters about how to use ranked choice voting because the people's veto, by just getting the signatures to put it on the ballot, we froze the law in place as it had been approved. So ranked choice, we forced the state of Maine, and the politicians who said they didn't want it, we forced them to implement it for the June 2018 primary election. We also had to take them to court to get it done. We were in court, I don't know, 4 or 5 different litigation efforts while this is also going on with a referendum and an education campaign. And it was the hardest thing I have ever done. But it was the most rewarding thing on election night when we won by a wider margin than we had won in 2016. And that Maine people came out and said, the people have the power, not the politicians. And we are going to insist on more choice and more voice in our democracy, and you can't take that away from us. And that was so fulfilling and rewarding. And so that was the hardest part, was remembering that you have to defend these wins, and sometimes that's the harder battle. You know, sometimes that's the biggest battle, because the people are with us. It's the powerful that are the challenge, and so that's one lesson learned. I talked a lot about the importance of people-driven campaigns. I'd also just say we ran a really nonpartisan campaign. We talked to people across the political spectrum. At times it made fundraising more difficult because we didn't have a boogeyman. We couldn't say, oh, it's so-and-so. They're the reason, and they have a letter behind their name, right? But it was really important for us because it was authentic to who we were and what our message was about. This wasn't about Republicans or Democrats or independents or Greens and Libertarians. It was about all of us and the kind of democracy we want. And that message resonated with people of the state of Maine, and that's how we won.
This guy keeps stealing all my good lines. You know,
you can start first next time.
Yeah, right. Next time, definitely pick me first. But before I even answer that question, I got to say this, because I would not be able to get into my daughter would not let me in the house, right, if I don't get a selfie with you before we leave. I'm going to say that right now. But she would not. She would
That's
not.
all of us.
When I...
I'll take a selfie with you.
Catherine, I want to.
You know, and I thought about the question. What advice would I give, right? You know, and I think that first and foremost is that I believe that we can't get caught up in like the taglines and the things that make us go rah 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 rah, and not actually put it into action, right? One of the when we talk about how politics is corrupt and the system need to be changed, and we the people have the power, but when we go to do something, the first thing we do is invite a politician to come and speak, right? And we acquiesce our power right back to them. You know, I think that if we want to be successful, if we really do want to embrace that the power do belong to the people, then we must have faith in our people, and all our people, and not just the people that look like us or the people that think like us or talk like us, but in every human being. That there is something inside of each and every one of us that we can connect with, right? That is more powerful than any political system, that's more powerful than any huge donor. It's something that will transcend the partisan politics, transcend the racial biases and anxieties, and really just come together along the lines of humanity. That was something that I think that if we embrace, we can accomplish. But then the other thing is and it's simple, right? You gotta embrace love. It's just that simple, love. You know, I tell people that, man, yes, it is exciting about re-enfranchising 1.4 million people, and that was, the largest enfranchisement of American citizens since the women's suffrage movement, and that's a great thing. But I think that there was something greater. It was something greater that happened on November 6th. It was something greater, and what that was that when we had those 5.1 million votes are a million more than any candidate received, right? Those 5.1 million votes were not votes that was based on hate. They were not based on fear, but those were votes that was based on love and forgiveness and redemption, right? And I'm trying not to cry because what we seen was so beautiful because this country got to see love winning the day, right? Love being able to tear down barriers, to drive out hate, to drive out fear, right? To tear down these labels. That I can reach across the aisle and I can grab hands with a conservative and call him my brother and mean it, and mean it. That I can reach across and grab a white person or a Latino or immigrant and say that I am you because you're me. That's what was more important. And so what I recommend to folks is that you have to embrace love, because if love is not at the center of what you do, if love is not at the center of what you do, then you have to question your motives. I truly believe that love will conquer all. I do. And you have to believe that too.
Catherine, do you want to follow that?
Okay. As we would say in Utah, holy heck. How do I follow love versus hate? I can't even begin to think of that. Okay, but here I'm going to try. Okay, here's my advice. To any of the naysayers who tell you it cannot be done, remember the words of Nelson Mandela: it always seems impossible until it's done. Remember that. Because if you're somebody who wants to run an initiative in a crazy place like Utah, people are going to say, it cannot be done. There's 1,000 reasons why it's not going to work. It's not going to be successful. You're going to get up against big, powerful forces. You have no money. You haven't really planned much already. You know, it can't happen. That's what we were faced with when we kicked off Better Boundaries. And we thought about that. We reflected upon it because we didn't want to go in it without eyes wide open, knowing what the challenges were. But at the end of the day, we said to ourselves, well, what's the alternative, right? What's the alternative? To let these maps continue to get more and more rigged as technology increases, right? That's why gerrymandering is such a big deal now. I mean, it's been happening. I think one of the prior panelists said it's been happening since the beginning of our country, right? But it's gotten so much more egregious in the last couple of decades because of the increase in technology, and that's only going to be worse in 2021. So the answer is, we had no choice. We had to move forward. We had to tackle those seemingly insurmountable obstacles and do what we did. And it took a lot of tenacity and fervor and passion, and in the end, it happened. And back to what I said at the beginning of the panel, if it can happen in Utah, it can happen in anywhere. It can happen in Virginia and Arkansas and Oklahoma, where good work is already being done. It can happen in any state where there's a right to wage a citizen ballot initiative, which is in all states, which is a shame, but it can happen there. And by the way, it needs to happen quickly because 2021 is just around the corner, right? And it will be great if the courts resolve partisan gerrymandering for us. That will be wonderful. But we can't take that chance anymore because that's not a sure thing anymore. And so that means it's up to the states. It's up to people like the ones who are sitting on this stage with me. It's up to all of you to take democracy in your own hands and say, no more. We're not living with the status quo. We're going to try to accomplish the impossible. And guess what? We're going to do it.
So my advice is that the choices, the details that you settle on early matter, because you're going to build the coalition that you're going to need to win to actually change how things are done. If it was easy, we wouldn't be doing this, right? But it's going to be hard, and you're going to have to go in with your head held high and be honest and say, this is what we're trying to do, and you're going to have to lay out and be able to defend the details, whether that be in community presentations, editorial boards, when you're asking for money, when you're asking for people to come and endorse what you're doing, because it's very easy in all of these efforts just to say, yeah, you go do that, great. I'm not going to stand in your way. I'm not going to oppose it, but like, I'm just going to let you fizzle out. And so that early work really, really pays off in ways that you can't know now and you can't expect.
My only addition to all that's been said is that we need to give people who are maybe of the same political persuasion, maybe the same religious persuasion, maybe a different color or whatever, we need to give them permission to do what they know is right in their hearts, to do what they know is right intellectually, and get past the labels. You do not have to vote straight Republican ticket. You do not have to vote straight Democratic ticket. You need to vote for issues that are right for the next generations to come. And that's why I'm so happy to see a young woman who's on a fast track to leading us that way. And to my grandkids, who, the one, my only granddaughter, picked up a badass grandma ring in the airport for me. And she's allowed to say that.
Well, you guys are incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you've done. So inspiring. I don't know who gets up first, honestly. I don't know if I walk off or you guys. But let's give a round of applause for these amazing people. So incredible. Thank you.
They'll be giving me a blood test.
Yo, hello. There you go. Okay, where's all of our friends? Here we go. Come on, y'all. Hunting you down. Thursday afternoon. Beautiful day.
I'm feeling better, y'all.
Me and Wendy down here. We're going to give a shout out here to our favorite people. Tell you what's going on. Do what?
I'm wearing my sunglasses.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, if y'all would just share a little bit, pass it around. See a couple of you come on. I don't know. It doesn't tell me who I can send it to. Just like random. Can you go on Family Forward and find it?
Yes.
It should be showing up there. If y'all would just come on. We got to talk to you. What an awesome day we had today.
Yes, we did.
Talking about changes that need to be made in child welfare. Oh, wow.
Are you in Family Forward?
I am. Okay. No, that's
Here we
not
go.
today. There we are. Yep. Okay, so share that. Tag a few people.
I don't know how to do that.
Well, I don't know if it'll let you tag them as a person watching. So just says to let me do that. So you just have to share it to your page. And when you share it, I think maybe you can tag a few people. I'm not sure. You do. Okay. How are we doing, guys? I see a few of you. Come on to say hello. Oh, wow. You guys, it just takes getting out there, stomping the pavement.
Yes.
Talking to people, being willing to tell your story. And showing pictures of your kids. Lawmakers, they are your lawmakers. They want to know what's going on. Okay, a couple more here, and we will start. Come on.
Just share it away. Share it away.
Share. Okay, that's all I'm going to tag so we can get started here. Why do you have your sunglasses on?
Because of my wrinkles.
Oh, stop. Okay. So we are here. This is Connie Reguly and
Wendy Hancock.
And we're here in downtown Nashville. We're sitting outside because it's a beautiful afternoon outside at the Doubletree Hotel. And we have been busy today. We've had some really good meetings. We want to give a little shout out to our stalkers and spoilers. Hello, Tracy. Hello, Sarah.
Hey, Dee Dee.
Hey, Dee Dee. Hey, Krista. All you guys who we know are going to like come and like.
Hi, Angie.
Yeah, Angie. Yeah. Oh, Angie. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they can, because we know they'll be like right on here, finding out what we're doing. Thumbs up. Yep. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Randy. Yep. Share.
And I do feel better today. Thank you.
Yeah. So Wendy's been sick this week, and I set up appointments today to have her talk to her state legislators about what was going on, because the legislature always has a right to investigate the state agencies. They always have that right. Do you get that out there? Your state legislators have the right to investigate the agencies and what they're doing. So I set up appointments with her reps and her senator.
DeKalb County.
Yep, because I wanted them to tell the story. And I need, as I've told you before, our state legislators are the ones who can start to make a change that is all about the law and the people, right? The law and the people. So they need to know how the law is affecting their people. I hope that there's a little background music here. I hope it's not too loud for y'all, but I have to hold the camera away from our little faces so we can get together here. So we met with Senator Mark Pody.
Yes.
We met with Senator Carrie Roberts.
Yes.
And we met with Representative Terry Lynn Weaver. And
they were great.
They were so awesome. They were all very welcoming. Yes. They listened. They all know me, because even though I haven't, like Mark and Terry, I haven't talked to this session, but I've just been out there over the years, just shaking hands and, just putting my face in front of them. And every time I open my mouth, it's about child welfare reform. I mean, I know there's a lot that needs to be reformed. Everything from gun rights to abortion to this to that to whatever. However, my torch is child welfare reform and preserving families and getting DCS totally reorganized and revamped.
And I want my kids to know that I am working my tail off to get
yes,
them
she
home.
is. And yep. And not only that, I mean, Wendy's here because it's not just about working to get her kids home. It's to keep her kids protected from the system for their entire life, their generation. Their grandkids. When her kids have kids, now that her kids have been part of the system, they will be targeted. Yep. We know they will. I've seen it over and over and over. Today, I showed these reps, I showed them the news stories that had been done by Dennis Ferrier at Fox 17 about how kids have been taken away wrongfully, and
ex parte
educated the non-lawyers on what ex parte is, which we call the behind your back.
Behind your back is
behind
the way
your back.
They put it.
Yep. So anyway, we are having a little toast here. Uh-oh.
A non-alcoholic, y'all. Non-alcoholic.
We're having a little toast here on
don't freak out.
Being able to get the story told and get out there today. So, so y'all just, y'all have to do it. And I've got to tell you, people come online and tell their stories. People messaging me and tell their stories. And I know, man. I mean, I can't even keep up with it. It's just never ending.
There's so many stories out there.
So many. And so many families broken up over this. And until we have a voice, and they want to silence us. They want to keep us quiet. That's their goal, is to keep us quiet.
And not record, because that will catch them.
And, I even told Representative Weaver, which I don't remember who I told this to, because we've had so many conversations today, I can't remember who I told what. But I said, I used to tell parents, no, don't go talk to anybody while your case is pending. I can't go talk to anybody while your case is pending. But I said, baloney. Those days are over. Because
Watch it. I know you're watching. Get on there.
Yeah. If you are being wronged, if your constitutional rights are being violated, if you're being silenced and not being able to tell your story, then it's a problem. It's these secret courts and this secret society stuff can no longer keep maintained, because it's your family, it's your life, it's your kids, it's your experience. So it is time to speak up. Get your story down.
What's the holdup with the return of my kids?
Yeah, what is the holdup? Money.
Money.
What is the holdup? Yep, I mean, past drug screens,
Toenails,
did psych evals, did
every visit, doctor appointment, IUP.
you know, IOPs, visits,
even taking the dog to the hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
Go shout out to Drew.
So what is the holdup? It's attitude from the batitude. Okay, it is like people who have their heels dug in because they want to be right. It's not about them serving the people
or about the kids.
It's about them wanting to be right. You are so right, Randy. All of it needs to stop. Kids are being stolen from their homes, and these state agencies are all about it. And it's all about the money. The money. And as we talked to legislators about the same kind of problem is going on with education, with welfare, all the false, wrong incentives, all the bureaucratic agencies that get hung up in their own little territorial plays, and the people are done. We're done with it, okay?
It's over.
It is over. It is so over.
My kids want to come home.
It is time that this ends. And these children, I mean, in a 12-year-old, a year in the life of a 12-year-old is like 5 or 6 years. I mean, that is their developmental time in their life. And, you know, they need their family on a day-to-day basis.
Their whole family, not just part.
Right. Not some freaking 4 hours a month. They need their family. So, you know, this is, it's over.
Oh, hi, Dad. I want to tell you, hi, Dad. I hope you get to talk
there?
to kids soon. No, he's working, but, you know, he'll watch it later.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you're right, Patty. We're tired of begging. It's we've got to be vocal, though. Y'all got to get your stories down. Y'all need to be able to understand. You've got to explain to people that you talk to about the federal funding and how the federal funding is incentivizing keeping your kids away from parents, right?
And just watching Connie do her thing today, they want to see they want timelines. So like Connie says, make a timeline. They want to know how it started and, you know.
Yep, and if you don't sit down and make some notes about what the timeline is, your head's going to spin when they say that. You know, I even ask people that. I'm like, what? Get down with your timeline. I am not even going to have a conversation with you until you have a timeline. Hey, Carrie, we love you, Carrie, for all the support. Yeah, and all the sweet messages you send me. Yeah, so if you don't, you know, people call and they want to talk to me and tell me about their cases, and I'm like, no.
Her phone blows up.
Yeah,
well,
it does.
But it's me, but.
Well, other than you.
Yeah. She'll have like 150 missed calls.
Yeah, so, yeah, and we, you know, we think we're going to be family after this is over.
Yeah, she's going to adopt me.
Which I've told more than one person that too, so I don't know. I'm going to have a lot of kids by the time I die because I'm going to be the mama. Are you able to get away? Okay, look. Okay, y'all stop. Okay, so,
hey,
right. Yeah. You all got any questions? A lot of it today was educating, trying to educate them about the funding, and I showed them the news stories. If y'all remember, so I know we got a lot of new members.
We kept to the gag. It was just all statistics, information.
Yep, and about past stories,
money.
And just about why they won't return kids, and you know, personal information about having passed the drug screens and stuff. So, you know, we're, you know. But it wouldn't matter because the legislature always has the right to investigate DCS. Always, always, always. The legislators have the right to investigate DCS. What's going on by DCS. What the DCS attorneys are doing, what the DCS caseworkers are doing, what the DCS family service workers are doing, and y'all know who you are. They always have the right to investigate you because they are there for the people. And you work for the taxpayers. Okay, so don't ever forget it. You work for the taxpayers. So if you want to take this video and show it in court, that's what it's going to say. You work for the taxpayers. Hello, we're done. Oh, goodness gracious. So
we've had a good day. We've had a really good day, and they really listened to what Connie had to say and wrote stuff down, and
yeah.
So,
And
Everything
and
helps.
Wendy, I mean, I know some of y'all like don't get off your butts and go do something. I mean, Wendy drove 2 hours from her home in rush hour traffic in Nashville, by the way.
And I've been in bed sick since Sunday.
And she's been in bed sick, and I made her go to the doctor and get a steroid shot.
And made it here.
So that she would be here, Anyway, I'm like, you're going to come. You're just going to come. So
if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah, she got stuck in rush hour traffic coming into Nashville, which is horrid. If any of you know that, I made her get here early. And
God help me get home.
Yeah, I took pictures of her and her kids together, handed it out, so it's real. And yeah, let's create our own oversight and ethics committee. I totally agree.
They all want to know how to fix the problem.
Everybody wants to know that. They're like, what do we do?
We got some pretty good answers, but...
Well, we've got answers. They don't have answers. We've got answers.
She had a great one to read.
What, blow it up? Oh, I didn't say that. Anyway, because we don't want to sound like
we're
be
threatening
accused
anybody.
of threatening. That's the big thing, that we're accused of threatening people. Look, we don't belong to that party. We don't threaten people's lives. We're not in that party.
No, we don't kill. We don't kill babies.
Yeah, but anyway, this is not a political issue.
Okay,
just
sorry.
So just remember, this is a bipartisan issue because taking children, ASFA. I talked about ASFA today. I said, do you know that there's a price tag on every kid's head as soon as they enter foster care? And, they kind of get it. I mean, if they've been involved with the Department of Education, it's the same way. As soon as the kid enters public school, there's a price tag on their head. It's a federal funding dollar. It's all about keeping those federal funding dollars. I mean, we heard today that now the Department of Education wants to start doing surveys and testing on kids about their ethics and morals in their family household. Can you believe that? We also found out today that the bill that criminalizes parents for changing the child's school enrollment during a quote-unquote open investigation by DCS, is that they can be criminalized, has passed the state Senate. I know DCS had to go and lobby for that bill. This is police state stuff,
like
guys.
29-0?
Yeah, 29-0.
Yes, Carrie, documentation and timeline.
Yep,
Yes.
document and timeline. But this is a horrible law. I don't know how to stop it.
Crazy.
I mean, DCS gets up there and starts lobbying for bills and talk about how they're trying to protect kids, and they don't talk about how they're persecuting families and breaking families apart for no
There's
reason.
nothing reunification about it.
No, nothing. It's not about they put that on the perm plan just to make it sound good, but then behind closed doors, they're like, no, well, these kids never need to go home. Yep, we know. So, yeah.
Sometimes accidents happen for a good reason. That was an accident, but now we know.
Well, so we appreciate you all listening so much. We appreciate the Family Forward Project, y'all. We've got to grow in numbers. Every time I go and I talk to a legislator, I say I've got 12,000 members in the Family Forward Project, and and I know that we can have more. So, please share. Please let people know. Please, I'll repost those news stories that we did. I did last year, a couple years ago with Dennis Ferrier, so people can see the real stories, because those stories are appalling and they're happening every single day, every day.
It's sad.
Yeah. Okay.
And shout out to Miss Owens this morning for letting me know what was going on in Smithville.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's...
If anyone went and enjoyed snacks and live music.
Yeah. So... I'm thinking about it. I don't know. Maybe I'll just put it in a court document.
I'm sure they'll bring this to court.
And I think by one legislator, I was called a name, and I cannot remember the name.
Fireball?
It wasn't, because it was like, he goes, Connie, you are, it wasn't nuclear. It wasn't Fireball.
He basically said, just don't piss everybody off.
Yeah, he called me a name. So it was I'm going to have to see if I can wrote that down anywhere. So, but basically the word has gotten back to him that I'm pretty controversial. That's the nice way to say it, that I'm controversial. So we got to get a lot of things changed.
Counties met their match.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but you know what? Unless we go, start kicking and screaming. But I can't do that alone, y'all. I can't kick and scream alone. I can't do it. I got to have y'all kicking and screaming too.
If y'all can just spend just a day with Connie, wow, and see what she does. It's amazing.
Yeah,
I've seen her in the courtroom, but out here on the streets.
Yeah, once I start talking, it's like, whoa.
They have no idea. Firecracker, that may have been it.
Firecracker. Maybe firecracker.
I don't know.
But yeah, I'm controversial, okay? But being controversial has helped change some laws, okay? And it's got to change. Your kids, your grandbabies, if this is not changed, this police state law that just passed in Tennessee, and there are at least 2 other states that are trying to pass that everybody is a mandated reporter. I mean, one of the suggestions I made today is that the whole mandated reporter thing needs to go.
And anonymous reporting
just needs to go, because a responsible professional is going to report a child that they think is in danger. But there are situations where, and I gave a couple specific examples I'm not going to talk about here, but there are times when a responsible professional is going to do the best thing for the family, which is not necessarily including the state. So that just has to go. Firecracker. I think it might have been firecracker. Yep. So, but you got to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we talked about Iowa today, y'all. Iowa was brought up today. So
yeah, in Indiana, and I also told them that you're 12 times more likely to be abused in foster care than you are in your own home.
Sure are.
Yep. We talked about the suicide of moms because of kids being stolen. I talked about grandparents being cut off. I talked about kids being placed 300 miles from their family in culturally inappropriate settings.
And that's breaking their own rules,
Yep. Mm-hmm. And it's unconstitutional for kids. I mean, it's just horrible. So, Spitfire? Did he use Spitfire?
I don't think he said Spitfire.
I don't know if it was maybe Firecracker, because I know when he said it, I'm like, why would you call me that? Unless you talk to somebody else.
He knew who you were.
So yeah, we're going to kick the bucket. Yeah, and we're not just kicking the bucket down the road. We are flipping the bucket over and spilling it out and moving forward. So y'all need to start listening out there. Y'all folks who are the spoilers and haters and stalkers on the page, y'all need to start listening and understand.
I don't know how you sleep at night.
Yeah.
I'd like to toenail test you guys, but...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I know kids having suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation of kids, or kids who want to run away, kids who do run away, who are in foster care.
Good kids that wouldn't normally do stuff like that,
Yeah.
And then I think us parents are crazy because we get upset because you took our kids. Like, are we supposed to be okay?
Yeah.
Like the first video I was in, I was called intoxicated.
Okay, let me see if I can find, who I want to, trying to find somebody here I want to chat with. Oh, darn. Oh, wait, nope, hang on here. Gennifer.
Jennifer.
Yeah, Wynn. Yeah, it's her birthday
Happy
today.
birthday, Jennifer Wynn.
See if we can find her. Oh, no freaking results. Dang.
I know, I can't find her either. Jennifer Wynn of Kansas.
Yeah.
Well, she'll watch.
Let's see if we can find her. I'm going to see y'all. Today is Jennifer Wynn's birthday, if y'all don't know that. Let's see if I can find her. Sometimes
she's another firecracker.
Sometimes they don't let Family Forward does not, they boot her out of my group or something sometimes, so I can't find her. Yeah, Rosie, see if you can get Jennifer Wynn in here. I'm trying to see. Yeah. Trying to get a hold of her. She's probably out celebrating her birthday, but for some reason it's not
but she's always...
letting me. I had a nice chat with her. No. Come on, Jen.
I don't know why. Let me see if I can pull her up. I don't know.
No. I don't know. Maybe she has some special setting there that... Can you share it with her?
I'm going to try.
Okay. Wendy's going to try to get it shared to her timeline or something.
or inbox or something. She's not pulling up.
Not coming up either. Okay.
All right. She's not taking a Facebook break. Of course not.
No, she's not. She's just having a birthday today. Let me just go over again what's coming up, y'all. So, yeah, Jennifer went. Yeah, are you able to tag her, Rosie? I see her name, but it doesn't look like she's being tagged. Yeah, see if you can get her actually, like, tagged on this or shared on her timeline. Somebody share it to Jennifer Wynn's timeline, please. And somebody
It's
share it
so
to.
pretty outside.
See if you can
That's
get it
all.
shared to Jennifer Wynn's timeline. Maybe she'll come up. Okay, so a few more things coming up I want to let you know about. So the week of the 8th, April 8th-ish, I don't know, I don't have a calendar in front of me. Of course, my calendar's on my phone, and I'm on my phone. So do you have a calendar? Yes. Okay, according to Wendy's calendar. Okay, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th of April, I'm going to be in Virginia at the American Bar Association National Convention for Parent Representation and Child Representation. We're going to talk about the Families First Act. There's going to be some national leaders there. I think Daniel Hatcher is going to be there, who wrote a book. He wrote a great legal memorandum on kids and poverty and parents, and then he also wrote a book on it. I think Richard Wexler, Diane Redleaf, Vivek Sekaran, and I think Jerry Milner, who's the federal head of the Children's Bureau, is going to be there. So you know me, I'll be shaking lots of hands and meeting these folks. And then we have Iowa has an event going on April 25th. Unfortunately, right now I can't go because I have a court hearing scheduled that day in Tennessee, and as y'all know, I have to work. So I have a court hearing. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. And then, let's see, April, May, May.
You tell them your calendar, they try to schedule stuff.
I know. Exactly. I think they do too.
It's like they write, oh, she's busy this day. So
yeah. I could talk about that some more. But so I'm trying to get to California in May. We're working on that. I'm definitely in Detroit in June the 22nd. Any of you within 2 hours, 3 hours of Detroit, y'all need to come up to Debbie Williams' thing at the Detroit Library. I need to work with y'all to get some things set up for July, August, and September, and October. So get your states. Thank you, Rosie. Get your states together here so we can get it together. I'm going to try one more time. See if I
there's
can
a
find
lot
her.
trying to get her in there.
Yeah. Jennifer, call out. Jennifer, I should have sent her a text message before we started.
Yeah, I don't remember.
No, nada. Hang on, y'all.
We'll see how much trouble we get into with this.
No. Okay, so it is not letting me find.
Okay guys, so thank you for tuning in. Those are the videos I had saved for today from Represent Us. We will be pulling through more as they move forward, as well as other movements, other groups, and other protesters. Please, a reminder, if you are out there on the streets protesting, if you'd like to have your videos featured here, send them to us through direct message and we will get it on. We were also looking for people interested in doing interviews. If you'd like to be interviewed, please get on here. We will love to happily talk to you about the issues in your state, in your city, in your communities, or your country. This is Yellow Vest TV signing out for now, and we will see you soon. Have a good night, guys.